Hi, I'm Canon from Wall Branch Library, and I'm here today to talk to you about the Star Wars canon. As some of you may or may not know, that Disney purchased the Star Wars canon and the movies and the franchise from Lucasfilms about 5 to 6 years ago when the first movie came out, number 7. And since that time, Disney has taken it upon themselves to clean up and reorganize the canon. So as somebody who maybe is new to the franchise or maybe wants to read more than just watching the movies, this is kind of an introductory into that so that you have a better idea of the entire canon than just the movies. So when Disney took over the canon, they deleted a lot of things. So if you were to ever go back and look, there may be things that were in the canon that you love that are no longer in there. Our website does a great job of having both what is currently in the canon, and if there are some books that maybe you heard about from somebody and want to read, they also list everything that's not in the canon, so you can get a feel for them. But be warned, if you read a non-canon book, don't expect it to show up in the movies or in any TV franchise. So the first book is called Master and Apprentice, and this book is what starts the canon off at this moment. There are books coming out about earlier in the Star Wars canon, which takes almost place 200 years before Lucas's 4, 5, and 6 movies come out. But those books haven't come out, and they're going to be both books and comics. So at this moment, we don't have any information other than they are to be the height of the Jedi Temple and their abilities. So I'm looking forward to watching and reading them and seeing what comes from them. Kind of hoping they make maybe a movie about it. That'd be great. But the first book is called Master and Apprentice, and this was actually started as an audiobook. And it's a great audiobook because it has multiple people reading parts. Sometimes when you have a single author read a book, they can get a bit monogamous and it gets hard to understand what character is saying what. So this is nice because the people who read are also characters that play characters. So Ventress is in this book, and the woman who voice acts her in the Clone Wars series does her voice in the book as well. So that's a nice treat. But this book is all about Obi-Wan and his master Qui-Gon Jinn. And it takes place prior to the Clone Wars, so this is pre-4, 5, and 6. This is pre-anything else. So like I said, this is the very start of the canon. But if you are to read the book, it's kind of choppy. It almost reads like a screenplay. It will give you the character's name and then their sentence, and it goes on from there. So I usually recommend people listen to this book because of that. It's just really awkward to read. But it's great because you get to listen to Qui-Gon talk to Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan in this instance is the Padawan, or he is the apprentice. That's the word they use in the canon. And so learning about a character that I enjoy seeing through both the Clone Wars 1, 2, and 3, and then on into 4, is fun to see him as a young Padawan. Qui-Gon is his master, and he's a bit unorthodox, and he doesn't believe in some of the ways of the temple and what the Jedi are doing. So he frustrates Obi-Wan, who is very much a rule follower, and it's an enjoyable treat because knowing the canon, you know that when Obi-Wan gets his Padawan, Anakin is very much not a follower of rules. So it's fun to watch Padawan say, oh no, we must follow the rules, and learn, oh, he's going to have his own who will not follow the rules. So I recommend, if you're going to start with this series, you start with this book. It is not tied to any of the movies. You won't see this in any of the TV series. But again, if you want to start the canon, I would start here and then move on. You will find that this gives you some depth to characters that you may not see anywhere else. And like I said, people who maybe don't watch anything other than the movies will get some introduction to other characters that they'll see in TV shows or in the comics. Now, comics are a big and important role in the canon, and you'll see them crop up with side stories and more depth to stories that are briefly mentioned. And one of them would be Darth Maul, who you meet in number 1, Clone Wars, and both of his comics, 1 and 2, will follow his life pre and post episode 1. And I hate to do this, but I'm going to give you a spoiler. So if you don't want to, you might want to skip ahead a couple seconds. Darth Maul does not die in 1. He continues on. He's put back together through the help of his sisters and his mother, and has a much greater storyline. If you watch Clone Wars season 7, you will know this because he makes a big appearance. And I have a feeling he will probably be mentioned a lot in the Mandalorian series, because at one point Darth Maul ruled the Mandalorians. So the comics take place throughout the canon, and like I said, with Maul especially, you get a much better understanding of his character, where he comes from, how he got involved with Emperor Palpatine, and what happened to him after he met Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan in episode 1. So I would recommend those to kind of fill out your understanding. Again, you probably won't see much of that referenced in movies, maybe glossing over here and there. But I think it's really helpful when you're doing a canon like Star Wars. You're going to have to learn lots of people, and you might want to take some notes. It might help. Or you can always go on to multiple websites or onto ours. They have great listing of all of them. One book that I found really interesting was The Queen's Shadow, which takes place prior to Padme becoming senator. So this takes place after episode 1, but before movie 2. And this is all about her transitioning from the queen to her senatorship. And it's fascinating because I don't feel that they gave her a great role in the Clone Wars series. She's kind of one-dimensional, and I felt this book gave her a lot more depth in how you go from being a queen of a world to a senator, and how you become queen at such a young age, and what that looks like, and what happens next. And I find that fascinating because, again, these are things that are briefly touched on in movie 2, but they are really not talked about much. And so a book like Queen's Shadow will give you a better understanding of Padme, both as queen and then as senator. And they take place right between, like I said, movie 1 and movie 2. They also reference shows that you would watch in the Clone Wars show. So again, there are kind of tie-ins to other things that you'll read and go, oh, okay, that makes a little more sense why they did this or why that happened. There is a new book that just came out called Queen's Peril. The library has not purchased it, but I did notice that it is available on other devices, and I know we're getting it soon. So be patient. I know I'm excited to read it. And this one actually takes place after Queen's Shadow, and this is about more of her time in the Senate. So it sounds like it's a continuation, but not so much that it dives past movie 2, from what I can read. So it's very exciting. I recommend. They're not my favorite, and I know a lot of people have opinions about it, but you're gonna have to watch movie 1, 2, and 3. However, you can divide them up so they're not so hard. And once you start reading the canon, they become a little more enjoyable because you will appreciate side characters that you might not have seen. The TV series that I highly recommend is called The Clone Wars, Star Wars Clone Wars, and there are now 7 seasons. You can watch them out of order, but I would not recommend it. A lot of the storyline builds off of itself, so if you try to watch them out of order, you will lose some of the continuity of it. There are technically 5 seasons, and season 6 is called The Lost Missions, but it is season 6. It doesn't fall anywhere else in the canon, and if you were to go and watch season 7, it picks up right at the end of season 6. So I recommend it. It is a little painful through season 1. It's a little slow. It's a little confusing if you're not versed in movie 1 and even movie 2. So you may want to watch those first before you go on to the television show. Hang with it. It gets better. The characters develop. You really get to meet Anakin, and versus the movies where I felt like he's pretty one-dimensional and everyone knows where he's going, you get to see multiple sides of him. You get to see him gain his own Padawan, And I really am sad that we don't ever meet Ahsoka Tano anywhere else. And speaking of Ahsoka Tano, she has her own book, which I highly recommend because she is by far one of my favorite characters in the entire Star Wars canon. And it's a shame we haven't seen her anywhere else than in the Clone Wars television series and now in this book. Rumors are she may be showing up other places, and I hope so because she is a fascinating character. Ahsoka Tano becomes Anakin's Padawan in season 1 of Clone Wars. And her entire development and growth takes place through all of those seasons. And season 7, which just came out, was all about her living past Order 66 and what she does with her life. And this book is a continuation of that idea. And it talks about how, because Ahsoka is a trained Jedi, she can't just blend into the shadows like other people if you were running from something terrible. It's just why they're easier, why Jedi are easier to find and hunt down after Order 66. There's just something about them that stands out that makes them want to help people. And so this story is about Ahsoka and her development through that and her time into deciding that she wants to help other people and what that's going to look like. And if you have read this book and you've watched Clone Wars, it is a treat to see her in Rebels, the TV series, which to me was so thrilling to finally see her show up because when she shows up, it's like, yay, my favorite character's back. So again, another TV series we'll get to, but that's where Ahsoka fits in. And I hope that they're going to bring her maybe more to life because she's a great character. And I think talking and meeting other fans of Star Wars, she's one of everyone's favorites. So we get to movie 3. And movie 3 brings us to the end of Anakin's and the start of Darth Vader. Now, there is a lot of books, movies, and comics that happen in this time. So there is a whole series about Darth Vader after he becomes Darth Vader. And this is pre-movie 4. So it talks about how he fits into the whole plan of the Emperor, how he fits in with the entire military system. And it's interesting because it definitely shows a much deeper side to Vader and how he is not just a one-dimensional killing machine, and he's not just out to do everything that, comes later in his life, which I think as you read the canon, you realize he's a much more complicated character than I think the movies 4, 5, and 6 give him. And you get to meet a man who got manipulated just like everyone else by the Emperor and how that looks to him and what happens for him. So again, these are comics that are not going to be referenced in any movies or a TV series, but they give you a nice depth to a character that I think gets a lot of like, oh, he's got his own theme music and here he comes, but you may not get a better understanding of him just by watching the movies. So it's good to have these comics. There are no books, so all of the ones that are about Darth Vader are just comics, and they are simple side stories, either him dealing with the Emperor or hunting down the Jedi after Order 66. Now, there is one comic series that is not canon, but Disney is still producing it. This is the only series that if you read, you will not find any mention anywhere else in the canon. And Disney has said they're going to let them run out their storyline and then end it. So if you are to read any of Doc's, you have to know that she is not canon. Anything that happens in them is not canon, and you won't see it anywhere else. At least at this moment, that is what Disney has said. From multiple fans, from multiple sites, that is the opinion that she will just end as the comic does. I believe there are 3 more coming, and then that is the end of the series. So, just an FYI, it is the only thing that Disney is producing now for the Star Wars canon that is not part of the canon. So just an FYI, because you will see her pop up in a couple episodes of Darth Vader's comics. And that's how they meet, and then that's where her story splits and goes into her own. Just a warning for you. So we get into this middle ground before 4 and then before Rogue One. So these are the 2 major movies. Rogue One leads directly into 4. You can stop one and start the next one. There are a bunch of books that come out in this time period. What the rebels are doing, what is coming about from the Empire, and things of that nature. There is also a fabulous TV series. If you don't watch Clone Wars, which to me was kind of hard to watch, you absolutely must watch Rebels. It is the most superb thing that Disney has done, that anyone has done with the Star Wars canon, I think. The characters are well developed. There's no lag in the seasons. They end it fantastically. So I recommend Rebels. There are 4 seasons. You will not be disappointed. You get to meet some fantastic characters. You also get to meet characters that you would have seen in Clone Wars. So reintroducing to them is great. You get to meet Rex. He's one of the commanders of the clone army, and you get to see him again in Rebels. And it's great. So I highly recommend that television series. You get stories like Rebel Rise, which is all about what Jen Erso does prior to Rogue One. So this is her life after her father has left, after her mother has died, but before Rogue One. And it's just a nice side story. It's kind of fun. There isn't a lot of tie-ins to any of the movies, but you get to meet her a little more and understand her opinion about joining the Resistance, joining the Rebels, what it looked like to be orphaned, having Saul Guerrera as her guardian. So a great book, great side book. However, if you want a better understanding of Rogue One, I recommend Catalyst. Now, this is all about the building of the Death Star. And this is all about the politics that are involved in the creation of the Death Star. And you get to meet lots of characters in here. Tarkin's in here. You get to meet Ben's dad, Galen. You get to meet Krennic, who is in charge of the entire program. So you get to meet a lot of the characters, and you get a better understanding of how this whole Death Star came about, why it's so important to the Empire, what that looks like. So this is an excellent book, and it's really great at kind of giving you the Empire side of the story. Sometimes that gets forgotten to give you the whole Rebels and what they're doing. So you get to get an insight into what the Empire is doing and what that looks like. That also leads to Turken, which is a fascinating book about Turken. And you only get to meet Turken in 4, and it's a shame because he is such a good character. Well, you do meet him a little bit in Rebels and in Clone, but not too much. So I recommend this book because this is a great book to learn about the man who ran the Death Star program, who was in charge of a lot of the initiatives for it. You also get to see the military because he was technically part of the Republic before it fell and became part of the new empire. So it's interesting to watch him as a politician, and you get to look at the backbiting and the infighting that goes on to kind of get the emperor's approval for anything. At this time, you also get another set of books, the Thrawn series, which is about Captain Thrawn, and they're all about his life. They're told in multiple sets. You get the first one, which is about when he met Anakin, and then you get to meet him as he becomes part of the Empire and how he works with the Emperor. Now, Thrawn is a character you will meet nowhere else other than the Rebels series. He had a book series pre-Disney purchasing the Star Wars canon. However, anything in those books is no longer canon. So I had a few customers very confused because he passes away in those books, and then to find out that there are more books was confusing. So those books no longer are in the canon, and he has been revitalized and brought back. However, the gentleman who wrote his pre-Star Wars or pre-Disney canon books has written the new ones. So he has a great beat on what is necessary for the new canon. And I really hope that they put Thrawn somewhere else because he's very cool, he's very calculating, he's very good at reading situations, getting under the rebel skin, destroying their bases, and he's a really great character. He's a nice contrast sometimes to the search and destroy nature that is Vader, and those two do work together along with Turken. So it's interesting to watch all 3 of them work together. So we go right into episode 4. And then from episode 4, it's kind of a boom, boom, boom with the movies. There isn't a lot of development between 4 and 5 outside of books and comics. So you just get the movies. However, once you get past that, you do find that you get a lot of what happens after the Empire falls as the rebels start to rise up and become the new Republic. So you'll get a lot of what happens with Luke, what happens with Leia, and things of that nature. You also get comics about Lando, which are fun little stories. Lando is great as both the young Lando and the older version of Lando, and you get comics in both when he's younger and he's older, because he's always going to be a con man. So they're fun side stories. They tie in a little bit to the Han Solo movie, but not too much. They just kind of give you a nice, read into Lando as a person. Now, as you move into 7, 8, and 9, these are where the books are getting more waiting for the movies to come out, especially since some of them had spoilers about the movies. Books were not released until after the movies, so then you'll have to go back and kind of fill in the gaps of knowledge after you've seen the movies. And you'll see that with a lot of them. Black Spire is one of those that is definitely of that nature. Now, if anyone should travel to any of the Disney worlds in their Star Wars adventure, Black Spire is where those are all based. It is an outpost. It is where outlaws meet. It is on the Outer Rim. And it is kind of where you go to get information from maybe not so savory of characters. So this book takes place right before 9. And this is all about Leia needs some information about some uprisings, and she sends a spy into Black Spire to find that information. So again, if you are interested in the later canon, it is one of those you kind of have to wait until the movies come out, and then we get the books and the comics that are released afterwards. I think now that we have come to the end of 9, we'll definitely see a big influx of books and comics to kind of fill in the gaps of where things were and how those stories developed. So it will be really fascinating to watch all of those. I am a fan of 7, 8, 9, not so much, but 7 and 8 I really enjoyed. I have a feeling that with the insurgence of The Mandalorian and his popularity, we're going to see a lot more TV series. There are rumors that they are going to do an Obi-Wan, which would take place after 3 but before 4, so that would be exciting. Anyone that is a fan of The Mandalorian series, you definitely want to read later in the canon, because The Mandalorian takes place after 7 and 8, once the resistance has taken over and we see the First Order. It's right in that time zone when, as the First Order comes up, here comes the Mandalorian series. So, like I said, you will have to read later in the canon. Don't be afraid. I know it's a lot to take in, and you can always start, come back, try this and that. It's not necessary to read everything in the canon to feel like you have a good understanding of the Star Wars movies, or even if you only want to read the comics, that's fine, because I found that they have made the Thrawn books into a comic series, so you can read those if you don't want to read the books. I highly recommend that you start at the beginning and go through it. That's what I've been doing, because I have missed some of the books in the middle, so I'm going back and reading them as they go in order. And you get a greater appreciation for the movies and the TV series, because you see characters in a new light that I think you wouldn't see otherwise. So enjoy it, have fun. I'm looking forward to everything that's going to be coming out in the future. And if you have any questions, please come to the library. We have all the answers for you. Have a great day.